Today we're going to start our next unit, which is the horse industry. Okay, so we're going to be talking about everything related to horses. So, horses actually existed over 2 million years ago. They are one of the oldest domesticated breeds, they were domesticated about 5,000 years ago. They originated in North America, which then moved to Asia and Europe. So the North Americans had them long before the Asians and the Europeans. Okay? Why were horses domesticated, or why were they one of the first ones domesticated? Well, the reason is they were used for transportation, work, and military. Okay? Back when horses were domesticated, the only means of transportation was either horseback, or if you were in a covered wagon pulled by horses. Okay? Horses were also used for work. A lot of people, and farmers especially, would use horses to pull their plows or to pull a planter or do any type of work in the field that they needed. It would be horse-drawn work. Okay? Also, your military, your higher end or higher ranking military officials would actually ride horses. That's how they would get around back in the day, rather than vehicles. Okay? Just something to think about. Some terms you need to know when related to horses. Hands. We measure horses in hands, not necessarily inches. Okay, so if you've ever heard of the term, this horse is 14 hands tall or 16 hands tall, okay, that's how we measure horses. Now, hands can be converted into inches if you need to. 4 inches are in 1 hand. Okay, so you can do the math. 4 inches on 1 hand. Withers. This is the highest point of the shoulder. I will show you that on the actual diagram of the horse when we get to it in a little bit. Okay, a light horse is one that is 14.2 to 17 hands tall. They are usually used for riding. Your draft horse is more of like your workhorse. These were the ones that they would use in the fields to pull the plows or the planters or whatever you needed. That would be your draft horse. Okay, your ponies are never more than 14.2 hands high. Okay, that's an important number. If it is taller than 14.2 hands, it is now considered a horse and not a pony. A lot of times when you're showing horses and there is a pony class, they will actually measure your pony to make sure that it falls into the pony category and not into the horse category. Just something interesting. Okay, a foal is a male or female less than 1 year old. A filly is a female less than 3 years old. A colt is a male less than 3 years old. A mare is a female more than 3 years old. And a gelding, castrated male more than 3 years old. And a stallion is an uncastrated male more than 3 years old. Okay, next we move into some breeds. Now, these are not all of the horses' breeds out there. These are just some that are the most common, or some that you may see in horse judging or something like that that you would be involved in within this class. So, the first breed that we have are Arabians. They were developed in the Middle East. They're one of the oldest purebred breeds in the world. Okay, they are more of a hardy breed. Now, what does this mean? This means that they adapt easy to climates. They can withstand different climates or a sudden change in climate, different things like that. They're pretty hardy. Okay? They have a distinct appearance. Now, one thing to notice on their distinct appearance is their erect ears, their large nostrils, their small muzzle. You'll see the difference of some of the other horse breeds of how small of a muzzle that actually is. They have this arched neck, a short back. Look how short-backed that Arabian is. And they have a high tail setting. Okay, that's pretty prominent to an Arabian breed. The next breed we have is a quarter horse. These are more of your workhorse, a lot of people show quarter horses. Okay, that's a big thing. They were developed in the United States. They're great with speed at short distances. They have thick muscling. If you were to look at this horse, you could see the muscling within their hindquarters. You could see the muscling within their barrel, their shoulder, and their neck. Hey, all of that, you can see that muscle. That muscle is easily defined. That's something that is very prominent within the quarter horse breed. Okay, they can outmaneuver cattle. Okay, sometimes they're used as cutting horses when on big cattle ranches when they're trying to separate the cattle. Okay, they're usually easy to handle, pretty calm temperament. I know I grew up with a quarter horse and he was pretty easy, laid back going, whereas your Arabians can be a little bit more high sprung. Okay, your next one is your thoroughbred. Developed in England, they can run at speeds of 35 to 40 miles per hour. So basically, these are your racing horses. Any of those horse races that you're watching, those are thoroughbreds. Okay, a lot of thoroughbreds, once they're done with their racing, will actually be used for jumping or dressage competitions like you would see in the Olympics. Okay, so usually they go through their year or two of racing, and then they'll move into jumping or dressage. Kind of like a retirement job is what thoroughbreds usually are used for. Okay, Appaloosas. You can always tell an Appaloosa because of their spots. Okay, they have a distinct spotted coat as you can see in the picture here. Usually the spots can be egg-shaped and more than likely they cover the hindquarters or the whole body, but usually almost always will an Appaloosa have some sort of spotting on their hindquarters. And sometimes they can be solid in color with a little bit of spotting. They're a very versatile horse. A lot of people show them for little kids. If you have a very young rider just starting out showing, maybe they're wanting to show a horse, they would use an Appaloosa because they're very versatile and they're very calm. Okay, you can jump them if you want to. You could ride them English, you could ride them Western. Any of those would be good with an Appaloosa. Okay, your wild Mustangs. They are actually a descendant of domestic horses. Okay, so years ago, the wild Mustangs were horses that got out of a pen and then decided to breed upon themselves, and now they started their own wild Mustang breed, brought to the United States by Spanish explorers. Okay? And they come in all kinds of color patterns, different colors. They could be a brown, a gray, a black, a multitude of different colored patterns, and they are a wild temperament. These are not ones that you want to have around young children or into showing or anything like that. Okay, your next one would be your Morgan. They're a smaller to medium-sized horse, so they're usually kind of smaller than your quarter horse or your paints or different things like that. They have a compact body. Look at this horse and just see how different it looks from that quarter horse that was long-bodied. This is kind of a smaller-bodied horse. Okay, they have a stylish movement. Also, almost can seem like prancing. Their feet will prance and their tail sticks straight up in the air, just like that. And it's kind of more of like a stylish, pretty movement. A lot of people show Morgan horses, and it's really pretty when they show them, and you can see the difference of that horse. Okay, they can be used for showing, pulling carriages, or working cattle. They're very versatile on that. Okay, a Belgian. Obviously, this is a horse that originated from Belgium. Okay, they're a draft horse. They're usually this sorrel color. Okay, large, muscular. They are very willing, which is an important thing when you're dealing with draft horses because they're going to be working. Okay, and a lot of people use them in a pulling competition or wagon hitch, things that you could probably see at your local county fair. Okay, a Percheron. They kind of, to me, are a draft horse palomino. Is basically how I remember them. Okay, they originated in France. They're a carriage horse, pulling competitor. Some people use them in dressage or halter classes. They're shorter. They're a draft horse, but they're not as tall as other draft horses. They're more of a shorter-bodied draft horse. They're kind of stylish. That's where the palomino part comes into them. They've got that blonde mane and that blonde tail and blonde on their feet. Okay, but they are also very strong workhorse as well. Okay, here's your typical draft horse, your Clydesdale. Everybody knows what a Clydesdale. Everybody knows about the Clydesdales. They originated in Scotland. They are, again, your workhorse. They could be a multitude of different colors. They could be a bay, a black, a brown, a chestnut, or a roan in color. This one in this picture is more, of a bay color. Okay, they've got that dark mane and that dark tail and a lighter body. That's more of a bay color. They have 4 white legs, some sort of white on their legs, and they have white on their face. Usually it's underneath on their chin area or right on the top of their face down their blaze. Okay, and they'll have feathers, which is the hair on their legs. Almost all draft horses do. Okay, so here's a common pony breed that almost everybody has heard of. It's a Shetland pony. They originated in Scotland on the Shetland Islands, and you can still actually go to the Shetland Islands and get your own Shetland pony if you want to. They are the most popular breed of pony, okay, because of their small stature, but they're strong and they're hardy. Okay, they're going to be very strong when you're putting a little kid like this little girl on there. They have a heavy coat, a thick tail. You can see that big old tail back there. And usually they start off as everybody's pets. Okay, so when a young girl, Mom, I want a horse or I want a pony, they'll start them off with a Shetland pony until they get old enough to handle a horse. Okay, a Welsh. This originated in Wales. Hardy, strong, and intelligent. Any color other than your, they have color patterns that include patches of white or colorless skin. So you can see that it's very white here. And they're a good riding horse. A lot of people ride them in English competitions, or they just show them in English because they're more of an English type horse than Western. Okay, so why do we use horses? We talked a little bit about this when we talked about the individual horse breeds. So, combined training or eventing, events that test fitness and ability, your pulling contests, different things like that. Cutting and team penning. So, your Western riding events. You could do, people actually use them on ranches for cutting or separating cattle. Okay, dressage. Events that focus on the natural movement of horse. Dressage is a very beautiful, I think a very talented way of riding a horse. It takes a lot of practice. Driving. They pull carts, wagons, or carriages. Okay, or endurance riding, long distance riding for if you're going to be maybe on a touristy thing and they need to ride for long distances. Okay, those are what we use horses for. Okay, we also use them for fox hunting. And not very common here in the United States as much anymore, but in Europe they still use them with fox hunting. So, I recently went to Ireland on my honeymoon, and we actually saw some hounds out on a hunt with horses. Okay, so they'll usually take about 10 to 15 hounds, 2 horses, and riders. And the hounds will actually hunt the foxes and catch them for the riders on the horses. Okay? Interesting. Polo, you can see it down here. It's kind of like, the best way I can describe it is soccer on a horse, because you're hitting with a mallet to hit a ball in a goal, but you're riding a horse. Racing, we talked about that a little bit. Rodeo, okay, or show rings. So this is something that I did. I rode English and Western pleasure in horsemanship and equitation, different things like that. So it was testing the basic skills of riding between you and the horse. Okay? So, here are the parts of the horse. I realize that there are a lot of parts on a horse. Okay, but some of the major ones that I'll point out to you. The withers. This is where your saddle will sit. This is something that's very important when you're talking about from the withers back to their croup. Okay? Different terms that you would use when talking about horse judging. Okay? A lot of these terms are the same on a horse as they are on your cattle or your sheep. Okay, they all have a loin, they all have a back, they all have a cannon bone, a pastern bone, a fetlock. Alright, all of them, those animals have that. So once you learn the basis of the parts on one animal, there are some differences, but you can almost always label any livestock animal based off of one, just because of their terms are so similar. Okay? Colors and markings. So, horses actually have different colors. Okay? we talked about a few of these as we went through your different breeds. Okay, your sorrel or chestnut. Their mane and tail is not black, and they're usually a brown color. Okay, your bay, they have usually a black mane or tail. Okay, your brown, they're usually brown. Black, solid black with no light coloring. Gray is a mixture of white. Palomino, they have that yellow body and a white, or I call it blonde, mane or tail. Your buckskin is usually yellowish or gold body with black points. Okay, so they kind of look like a palomino with black mane and tail, but your dun, they kind of look like a buckskin sometimes. Your roan, this is when you have white hairs mixed in with red or with black. And your pintos or your paints are spotted variations of different patterns. So they could be a black and a white, they could be a brown and a white. And then your Appaloosas have all those spots. Okay, this is something that's very important, is going to be on your test, is knowing the head markings. Okay, so a star is when they just have a marking up here in between their eyes, right underneath their poll. Okay, a snip's when they got one right on their nose. A strip is when they've got one right in the middle of their nose, or in their muzzle area. Okay, a star and a strip combines that star at the top between their eyes and goes down but stops right before it gets to their nostrils. Okay, a star, strip, and snip has all three of the ones we just talked about. Your blaze goes all the way down through the nostrils, and it all connects. Okay, a star, strip, and snip don't always connect. They just have different markings. But once it connects, it would be considered a blaze. Okay, and then a bald face is when it starts to touch the eyes and the nostrils. Okay, that makes it a bald face. All right, leg markings is also something that's important when we're talking about horses. Okay, so sometimes horses will have white all the way up to their stocking or just to their sock, even down to the pastern. Half pastern, you're basically just taking that pastern and cutting it right in half. Or the cornet, just that very tip right before their hoof, they may have a white marking on there. Okay, so these are all the important things that we are going to talk about horses. And for the next few days, we're actually going to do some worksheets where you work with saddles and you work with different things like that. But those are the basis that I wanted you to get off of the horse industry. Alright, so make sure that you took good notes and you hold on to those notes because you will need them for your test. Okay? Great.